Matsumoto.
My name is Justin Fuji.
And we're your Manzanar Dusk coordinators for this year. We hope you all enjoyed the pilgrimage earlier today, and we hope you all had a really good time there. Luckily, we had really great weather this year, so hopefully everyone enjoyed their time at pilgrimage. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope you're able to learn something new and build some community connections here today.
Manzanar Dusk started as Manzanar After Dark and was held around a campfire near Independence in 1997. It started by two former Manzanar committee members, Jenny Kuya and Ayako Hagihara, with the goal of fostering an environment that promoted intergenerational discussion. The program grew from 25 people, then to 130 at Legion Hall, and by 2019 we had almost 500 people. During COVID, we had to transition to a virtual Manzanar Dusk program, and while it wasn't the same by going virtual, it actually gave us the opportunity to connect people from around the world. Whether it was virtually or in person, Manzanar Dusk has always asked the question of what can we do now, and how can we address these unfortunate recurring events.
Manzanar Dusk is unique from other programs because we actually allow students to design the entire program, except for the part where we're speaking right now. So we actually have some great students from UCLA, UCSD, CPP, Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Fullerton, UCR, Berkeley, Stanford, and the Japanese American Youth Alliance, or JAIA. These students are in charge of creating a program that focuses on the importance of keeping history alive in storytelling. The partnership has always been really significant to the Manzanar Committee, and it allows us to nurture younger generations into activism, which is great.
These students have spent the past 4 months virtually planning for today's event, including participating at Katati, which is a 2-day intensive training at the Manzanar National Historic Site, led by the Manzanar Committee and the National Park Service. They have committed many hours and days to this event and put together an amazing program for you guys. I hope by the end of this program, you're able to leave with new bonds with people you may never met before. I also hope that you're able to take home new stories that you can share with your family, friends, and community. And finally, I hope you leave with a renewed drive as to why we still talk about this history and why we hope this history is never forgotten and never repeated again for everyone. Thank you guys.
I would now like to introduce our MCs, Bella and Tyler. They're going to be walking you guys through the program that they designed with their fellow Katati cohort this year.
You man.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Manzanar at Dusk, or MAN. My name is Kyler, and I will be one of your MCs tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Bella, and I'm the other MC. We appreciate you all coming and offering your time tonight to be in community. To begin Manzanar at Dusk, we want to give you a quick intro of what to expect at MAN.
Our theme today is identity and resistance, but you might be wondering, what does that even mean? Well, today we have some panelists that will help us answer that question.
We're going to be hearing about examples from the past and present that will hopefully inspire thought, reflection, and possibly even action.
Tonight we'll be split up into 4 main sections.
The first will be the panel, which will take about 30 minutes, and the next section will be a 15-minute section, where there will be activities like letter writing, protest sign making, and a collective poster that you may have seen when you walked in the back.
Then our next section is a small group discussion. This will be where you have an opportunity to share experiences, anything you learned or felt today, and you'll get to listen to peers and elders in this community. We will have about an hour to talk to one another, and we want to note that after the activities, please promptly find your group number and discussion leader so we can stay on time.
And the last and final section is our open mic section. This will be also about 30 minutes and is an opportunity for anyone to share.
Before we get started with the panel, we want to emphasize that this is a safe and welcoming space for everyone.
Please remain respectful in listening to our panelists, your peers, and presenters.
So, without further ado, let's get going with our panel. All right, question 1.
let's have everybody introduce themselves.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Let's take names and what school you're from.
Hi, my name is Tyler, and I go to Cal Poly Pomona.
Hi, my name is Jennifer and I go to UCLA.
Hi, my name is Kira and I'm here on behalf of Jaya.
Hi, my name is Tim and I'm also here on behalf of Jaya.
Now let's get to question one. How would you define either or both identity and resistance?
As I said, my name is Tyler, and I will be covering the identity portion of this question. To me, identity is the characteristics that define someone or a group. For example, as I said again, my name is Tyler, I am a Chinese American, and some things that I really enjoy doing are going out to eat with my friends and playing sports. However, during the Japanese incarceration, many people lost their senses of identity, whether it was their businesses, the culture, or even the food that they ate. They weren't able to have that sense of who they were. So they had to resort to finding new ways to find their identity. Whether that was something like gardening, baseball or other sports, or teaching. These things helped to make life a little bit more bearable in the camps and help them rediscover their love for whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and then to answer the other part of the question about resistance, I would define resistance as just staying true to yourself or your identity as Tyler defined, against outside forces pushing you to change or conform. So in the present day, this can be seen in like the Little Tokyo Community Impact Fund buying buildings to help small businesses in Little Tokyo remain, or like indigenous communities learning and speaking their native languages, or just union striking and protesting for better working conditions. So like, in a sense, resistance really is just like an assertion of your identity.
Wonderful, thank you. How does knowing your identity help connect you to your community? I align myself with both of these identities through cooking, whether it be Japanese or multicultural dishes. I cook with my bachan, my mom, and my sister for family gatherings. Whether it be making mochi ozoni and namasu for New Year's, turkey mashed potatoes and stuffing for Thanksgiving, or even tamales for Christmas, food serves as an expression of my identity and in a form that can be shared with others. And this has helped me learn a lot about my history and culture, and also connected me to the JA community.
Yeah, my name is Tim again, but when thinking about this question, I grew up on the East Coast originally, so I didn't have a strong JA presence to really identify with. But when I moved out to the Bay Area, I quickly became immersed in the Japanese American community. So things like attending Obon festivals, temple bazaars, family baseball games, all of those events really reaffirmed the importance of connecting with my heritage and my community. So I think when thinking about this question, I'm now able to give back to the community by attending these events and becoming more well-versed in them. So whether it's things like volunteering out alone or participating in groups like your NSUs or NCI or Jaya, I think even if it's just showing up at events, we're all able to give back to the community that's given us so much. So I hope we're all able to do that.
Awesome, thank you again to our panelists. Let's give these panelists a round of applause. Now we're moving on to our third question.
All right, question 3. Oh, yes, sorry. Can we have everyone introduce themselves, name, school?
Hi, I'm Devin, and I'm from Cal State Long Beach.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm also Long Beach.
Hi, I'm Candace. I'm also Long Beach.
I'm Keith. I'm from Cal State Fullerton.
I'm May and I'm also from Cal State Fullerton.
I'm Alicia. I'm from UC Berkeley.
I'm Bailey and I'm also from UC Berkeley. Hi, I'm Kalisa. I'm also from UC Berkeley.
Okay. So question 3. What are past examples of resistance that are important to you?
When we think about examples from the past that have helped us stay connected to our resistance, we think about what happened at the Heart Mountain Incarceration Center. This was one of the camps where Japanese Americans were incarcerated during World War II. Learning about this makes me think about what I would have done in their situation, because standing up for your rights is easy to say, but much harder when there are real consequences.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, many Japanese Americans who were already serving in the military were discharged. So at first they were labeled as 4F, which meant they were unfit for service, and then they were later reclassified as enemy aliens, even though they were American citizens. They were forced to live behind barbed wire and surrounded by guard towers, and they were constantly watched by armed soldiers.
By 1943, the U.S. needed more soldiers, and suddenly Japanese American men who had been labeled as enemy aliens were told that they could serve. Some of them volunteered anyways because they wanted to prove their loyalty, but others pushed back and resisted the draft, questioning why they should have risked their lives for a country that wasn't treating them as full citizens. And honestly, I think both choices took a lot of courage, just in very different ways.
Unsurprisingly, not many people in the camps wanted to volunteer. Why should they fight for a country that was denying them basic rights and freedom? And because there weren't enough volunteers, the government began drafting men directly from the camps. In response to this, the incarceratees formed the Heart Mountain Fair Play Committee. Their message was clear: they would not serve for the country until their freedom and constitutional rights were restored.
This wasn't just about avoiding the draft. It was about standing up for fairness and demanding to be treated as full citizens before risking their lives. They were convicted and sent to prison, but their action became a clear example of organized resistance during time of incarceration. As a Japanese American, this history feels personal, reminding me that the fight for justice is part of my own identity and something that I want to carry forward.
Thank you, Keith. Go ahead and talk. Thank you, Keith and May, for sharing your perspective of Heart Mountain Incarceration Camp and what the internees had to face when standing up for themselves as Japanese American citizens. I'd like to pivot to another answer, to past examples of resistance that are important to us. But first, again, hi, my name is Candace.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Devin, and we are representing Cal State Long Beach, and we'll be talking a little bit more about the past during this segment.
Okay, I want to ask you all to imagine what resistance looks like. That could be maybe protests, certain activist figures, and so on. But for our answer, we look at a form of resistance that you wouldn't typically expect, yet we view as just as important.
When the Issei first immigrated to the United States, they were faced with multiple challenges, including language barriers, navigating a foreign land, and, of course, racial discrimination. However, the Issei and Nisei, as well as many other immigrants at the time, were able to resist through staying true to their identity, even in times when conformity was heavily pressured onto them.
Racial discrimination for the Issei and Nisei were both social and institutional. Society treated them as less than for their ethnicity, and in turn was also seen through restriction in occupational opportunities. However, there was an aspect of Japanese culture that America sought over heavily and became a pivotal part of Japanese American experience through World War II, gardening.
So America associated Japanese heritage with garden expertise, and a large amount of Japanese immigrants were heavily involved in horticultural and agricultural practices, and they were admired for their residential landscaping across the West Coast. While initially being a creative outlet for the Japanese Americans, the beauty that America saw within these gardens and the efficiency that they contributed towards American agriculture became a means of survival economically for these Japanese Americans.
That is until February 19th, 1942, when 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly and wrongfully incarcerated during World War II. Japanese Americans entered the camps with no idea of where they were going nor for how long, and they could only bring items they could carry with them, many of which had sentimental and discrete cultural value and also practical use. With what they had on their backs and the little they provided to them by the camps, Japanese Americans tried their best to create a sense of normalcy.
Gardening became one of many practices that JAs participated in for this local city. 3 types of gardens were cultivated: parks, block/mess halls, and small personal gardens. One of the most notable gardens was the first mess hall garden on Manzanar on Block 22. Conceived by Harry Ueno, he was a prominent figure for his multiple acts of resistance on the camp, from the Manzanar Revolt, which will be mentioned later in the program, and surprisingly enough, gardens.
This is where we answer the question, how cultural connection impacts efforts of resistance. It may be interesting to wonder how gardening can be viewed as a form of resistance, but Harry Ueno, when he was first organizing the garden in Block 22, he intended to create it as an aesthetically pleasing site, something that his fellow inmates can view while they were waiting by the mess hall for their meals. And in a memoir by Jean Watsuki Houston, she talks about her childhood at Manzanar and reminisces about Merritt Park. In this memoir, she states, "You could face away from the barracks, look past the tiny rapids towards the darkening mountains, and for a while not be a prisoner at all. You could hang suspended in some odd, almost lovely land you could not escape from, yet almost didn't want to leave."
Despite relocating to these deserted camps with barely anything besides the belongings they had, or they could hold in their hands, and the knowledge they had, Japanese Americans like Harry Ueno were able to create beauty and peace through gardens.
Even during this time when hope and freedom were minimal, they looked to the cultural practice of gardening. As a key aspect of the Japanese American identity, being able to still engage in this practice and use it to bring a sense of hope in a time of hopelessness shows the strength they had and how their identity stayed unwavering.
We are here today with the belief that staying true to your identity is a huge form of resistance. Turning the barren, inhumane environment of the camps into a pocket of beauty and peace in the form of gardens not only shows aspects of the Japanese identity, but the cultural impact of resistance.
Thank you to Long Beach for that thoughtful answer. Now we turn to Berkeley.
Yeah, so looking around at Manzanar Camp today, all you see is really desert and mountains far away from urban cities. And so I was wondering, were all the incarceration camps away from city centers?
Most Japanese Americans were actually forced to stay at converted horse racetracks or fairgrounds in largely populated cities. These temporary prisons were labeled assembly centers, and over 90% of the over 120,000 Japanese Americans who were incarcerated during World War II were sent to an assembly center before being sent to a permanent camp. Today we will be talking about Santa Anita Detention Center.
Santa Anita was opened from March to October 1942 and processed over 18,000 people. The conditions were really harsh and the heat was really bad and the barracks were built really fast, so the living conditions were not great. My great aunt told me that most of the barracks were like quote unquote converted horse stalls that were really lazily hosed down and still reeked of horse waste. And that the smell was so bad that barely anyone would congregate inside, so instead they would opt to gather in really hot, cramped crowds outside with little to do for fun as the days passed by.
Early on, the Santa Anita Assembly Center administration abused their power. Examples include white mess hall workers smuggling out liquor, homes being broken into by internal police without consent, lack of youth education services, and more. In an initial act of resistance to their unjust treatment, over 800 individuals participated in a sit-down strike in June 1942, and a few months later, an unknown number of Nisei attacked members of the Internal Security Police, which became known as the Santa Anita Riot. The incident resulted in 11 men being sent to Tule Lake, a maximum security prison for those deemed most disloyal, and a crackdown on public meetings, and a change in camp administrations.
The Santa Anita sit-down strike and subsequent riot were some of the earliest instances of protest within camp. They demonstrated the unrest, anger, and resentment that proliferated amongst Japanese and Japanese Americans as they were sent to different incarceration camps for the crime they did not commit. These protests also severed Nikkei people from the model minority myth that suggests that Asian Americans are meek and accepting of their position without complaint. Japanese Americans were not happy or remotely okay with being imprisoned, and these historic actions are key examples of this.
Santa Anita is important to me personally for two reasons. For one, it's where my late grandfather's family was held before they were moved to Jerome and Rower. And it's also where my senior prom was held. So when prom happened, I dressed up and I felt like royalty for a day without knowing that over 80 years prior, my family had been imprisoned in the very spot I was celebrating. To me, this lack of knowledge I've had is a symbol of the ways in which our history has been erased, both by our families who have endured years of shame, trauma, and loss, and our institutions who are actively working to minimize the damage they caused so that we might forget the importance of resistance as they repeat their actions today. My high school let me down by not recognizing the history of the venue they chose for a prom. My university at UC Berkeley lets me down by punishing our students and faculty for speaking up about Palestine. And my government lets me down by wrongfully detaining immigrants in the same way our families were imprisoned. But the resistance of the Nisei who rebelled at Santa Anita, of Palestinians who continue to fight for their land and their lives, and of American immigrants and their global allies remind me why we say never again is now, and how important maintaining a cultural connection with our history and identity is in the fight for social justice.
Let's give them another round of applause. Let's go. So question 4, similar to question 3. So where do we see acts of resistance that are similar or different today? Oh, yes, sorry. Let's have everybody introduce themselves first.
Okay, again, I'm Jennifer from UCLA.
I'm Allison, also from UCLA.
I'm Jake from UCR.
I'm Hannah, also from UCR.
I'm Tula from Stanford.
I'm Grant from Stanford.
I'm Maya, I'm from UCSD. And I'm Yumi, I'm also from UCSD.
Thank you to all our panelists. To repeat the question for everyone, where do we see acts of resistance similar or different today?
Today, I think resistance comes in very similar forms. I mean, back then, the Japanese American community resisted detainment, discrimination, and abuses of power. Now we see this exact same thing in the face of ICE activity.
Yeah, immigration detention in the U.S. has reached an all-time high compared to 2 years ago, and there's been a significant increase in detainees. And not only that, but out of those detained, more than 70% have no criminal charges.
Just look at Minnesota. The detention, arrest, and illegal use of force that have been demonstrated there is sickening. However, the acts of resistance happening there are also inspiring. There have been nationwide protests like the No Kings protest that happened earlier this year and in the upcoming month. And people across the nation, even around the world, band together to advocate for democracy, for the protection of basic human rights, and for the right to step out of their door without fearing for their life. There are nation and statewide organizations advocating for the rights of immigrants, urging Congress to limit ICE funding, and providing immigrants with legal defense. Even on a larger scale, there have been coordinated economic shutdowns that have disrupted the system.
Acts of resistance are also being shown in smaller ways through solidarity and a sense of community. So in Minnesota, their sense of community is shown brightest in small instances, such as groups of people singing with each other in English and in Spanish, businesses offering their services to people in need, whether this be food, supplies, or shelter. Neighborhood watch networks patrol and give warnings to neighbor when ICE activity is near. Some people have offered to escort children to and from school or deliver food to families in hiding.
It's amazing how a community comes together in times of need. I feel like very similarly to Japanese Americans, acts of resistance have manifested in passive, active, and aggressive ways in the face of extreme abuses of power. Knowing our own history and seeing what's happening now, there needs to be a kind of urgency in demonstrating our solidarity with them.
I know what you mean. Back then, we didn't resist alone, and neither should they. For our community, resistance is a big part of our history, and we can't just leave it there. We need to make it a part of our future as well.
Thank you, UCLA.
I want to really echo the sentiments of my fellow peers. I know for us, Never Again is Now is really a rallying cry that guides us through ongoing oppression and resistance. Part of reckoning with the injustice that our community faced during World War II really encourages us to fight the systems of oppression that currently reproduce violence and harm. Acknowledging the foundation that coalitional work, the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement had for Nikkei redress in the 1980s, resistance is perpetuated through our support in the fight for reparations for Black communities who seek accountability and justice. The Nikkei community, including solidarity groups, camp survivors and descendants, and redress advocates, have drawn parallels to post-war organizing and the carceral experience to support H.R. 40, a bill proposed to address the persistent, intergenerational, economic, and social disparities stemming from the enslavement of Black people in the United States.
Nikkei's support for the Black reparations movement has included things like letter writing campaigns, webinars, phone banking sessions, and town hall meetings with Congress. And camp survivors, descendants, and redress recipients have provided powerful testimony and story that demonstrate that reparations and justice is possible for not only our community, but for every community, especially the Black community. In the same way that the civil rights movement and Black politicians like Representative Ron Dellums and Representative Mervyn Dimely and the Black Caucus have been integral to our community's redress movement, we have a moral responsibility to also fight and speak out for the reparations of communities affected by chattel slavery, incarceration, and injustice. When we think about these acts of solidarity as powerful forms of resistance, we can utilize the memory and history of both injustice and justice within our community to meaningfully ensure that this never happens to any other community.
Thank you so much for sharing. We'd also like to share another form of resistance. Art can also be seen as a way to resist erasure and keep important histories alive, especially when those stories have been pushed aside. I want to highlight a film called Third Act by Tadashi Nakamura, who reflects on his father, Robert Nakamura's life, and the impact of Japanese American incarceration on present times. And because it's told through family, the story feels a lot more personal and real to me, and not something that you learn from a history textbook. And that kind of storytelling changes how people understand the past, and it kind of makes it more emotional and more immediate. This film is just one example of artwork that can carry memories forward into our present, and while also pushing back against historical discrimination and generational hardship from being forgotten. In addition to film work, there's also visual art pieces that can also act as a form of resistance and storytelling. Patrick Martinez, a modern artist based in LA, utilizes art as a form of spreading awareness and strengthening resistance.
His recent artworks portray LA residents being victims of immigrant enforcement, and some examples that he depicts include kids on a track team being seized by masked agents, even a football player being stopped mid-sprint by an officer in military gear, and a young protester holding a sign reading "ICE out of schools" being beaten by an agent. These artworks place a spotlight on the violence and injustice brought by ICE. According to Martinez, he aspires to reflect the shared emotions that many possess during periods of significant unrest, and in hopes of capturing the collective conscience of LA. Looking through the artworks by Patrick Martinez, I feel a sense of urgency, discomfort, and anger. His artworks have the power to make viewers confront and acknowledge the injustice and find urgency in the situation in front of us. And I just really believe that artworks have the strength to really evoke those emotions that could not be felt with just words. And then one final aspect about art, how it can help shape acts of resistance that we want to address in our modern society is through music. Even in the very universities we attend, we can see this through taiko drumming like we saw today, and how not only the beat of the drum evokes a sense of strength and unity from both the player and the listener, but also because of how it has deeply rooted ties to Japanese culture and identity in America. Another example of this form of resistance is through musical artist Kishibashi. More specifically, his album Omoyari, meaning consideration and empathy, addresses feelings related to Japanese American incarceration during World War II. He doesn't just set his limits there, but also extends his music to immigrant communities in general and the common feeling of marginalization they may often feel when coming to America. So I'm gonna play a little clip from there. His music urges the listener to think of others and their experiences, actively acknowledging the past and coming up with new ways of strengthening unity, identity, and resistance through the universal beauty of music.
Incredible answers, San Diego, thank you. Art is very important in resistance. Now moving on to UC Riverside.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Hannah.
And once again, I'm Jake. We're representatives of the UC Riverside MSU, and we'll be talking about present-day examples of identity and resistance.
Yeah, we think resistance can be used to inform and to raise awareness and to make hidden systems visible to the public.
Speaking of art forms as means to protest and resist, we've noticed some acts of resistance that are happening near our daily lives. Recently, a group of artists in the Inland Empire, where UCR is located, launched a campaign to spread awareness of ICE's movements by creating posters that read, "ICE stole someone here."
They placed the signs around the neighborhood, on the streets, and public areas, specifically where individuals were reportedly detained by ICE agents without warning. A contributor to this project, Michael Rios, states in an interview that immigration sweeps typically happen early in the morning before kids are sent to school, when nobody's paying attention to what's happening.
Some other posters also included hand-painted images depicting a child releasing a balloon into the air, symbolizing a silent but profound impact these actions have on innocent families and children in the small act of resistance in the community. We recognize that not only did this small act of resistance bring communities awareness about raids in the area, but it also helps anti-ICE organizations identify patterns in enforcement from the visual data points to see where people were detained more frequently, which communities are being affected, which populations were targeted, and who to alarm and protect.
So combined with the student-led walkouts and the peaceful protests in local schools, having campaigns like these efforts reflect how organized solidarity can build both public awareness and a form of informal documentation. We believe that they contribute greatly in building a public record of enforcement patterns, to utilize them in supporting victims' families, and also knowing about an issue encourages people to take collective action to protest each other, or protect each other, sorry.
Thank you to all our panelists that answered all 4 questions. Let's give them one last round of applause. Thank you all for listening as well, and I hope you took something from what many of our panelists shared. I know there was a lot of topics covered, and we're all very tired, but thank you for being here and giving your undivided attention. So now we're transitioning to our activity time. So protest sign making is to the right, letter writing is to the left on the tables in the middle, and then we have a collective poster on the back wall there. Feel free to do any of these activities or chat amongst your friends, take this time to relax, and then we'll call your attention once we're ready to start moving to the discussion groups.
We'll give you guys reminders, and feel free to take things home, take pictures, all that good stuff. Just like keepsakes and things for you to take home. So please feel free to go explore and go to the activities. Thank you.
We also have a poster board in the middle from CSU LB and Fullerton that talks about the gardens and resistance. Oh, and CPP. Have fun, everybody.
If you are 9 through 15, you guys get towards the back half of the gym, and then 16 through 20, stay here. I know. Then, guys, spread out when you guys get out there.
Okay, is everyone ready for small group discussion? Everyone should have gotten a number like the one that my friend Nick in the middle is holding. If you did not get one, please go see him. He will be passing out numbers so that you can be assigned to a group. And then former incarcerees, if everyone can just kind of gather in these chairs, we'll assign you all to groups once everyone is kind of grouped up. We want to make sure everyone has at least one former incarceree or a descendant of a former incarceree in their group so that there's some storytelling from camp to be told.
And then how it's going to be set up, so groups 1 through 8 will be in the gym. So if you are participating and you are in groups 1 through 8, just relax for a sec. We're going to get 9 through 20 kind of organized down here, and then we'll have you guys set up. So how it's going to work is we have our discussion group leaders 9 through 15 in the back half of the gym. And then 16 through 20 are going to be over here. When we tell you guys, if you guys are 9 through 20, stand up and find your respective discussion group leader. Once we kind of, not yet. Sorry, not yet. Once we get everyone there, then they will lead you to your classroom or area where you guys will have your discussion. Just a couple things. Whether you are in here or in the classrooms or in the classrooms over there, we will have a water jug close by, just in case you need your fill water, hydrate. There should also be bathrooms close by, relatively close by, so just keep that in mind. Again, for these discussion groups, it is a safe space. You may not feel super motivated to share, but we hope in the hour that you do open up a little bit and don't mind sharing a personal story or two or an anecdote, just to kind of give everyone a little bit more perspective too.
Okay, so now groups 9 through 20, you can stand up and find your discussion group leader.
Again, if you're 1 through 8, just sit tight. 9 through 20, go find your leaders. Again, 9 through 15 will be towards the main entrance you guys came in from. 16 through 20 are behind us. If you are 1 through 8, just sit tight.